Welcome to the Bible Journey. My name is Mark Green, and I'm the pastor of adult ministries here at Otterbine Church. Today, I'm joined by Xavier, so introduce yourself and tell us what you do here at the church.
Yeah, I'm Xavier. I'm the youth pastor here, so that means I oversee the ministry from grade 6 to 12th.
All right. So we're going to be talking about John today. This is just sort of a question I like to bounce around. Why do you enjoy reading the Bible? When it comes to reading the Bible, gleaning from the Bible, what is it that it's like, here's what drives me, here's why I like it?
Yeah, I always heard this kind of analogy or illustration, but like the Bible is like a diamond, and you can twist a diamond every single way, and you find something new about the diamond, like it shines a new way. And so like for me, growing up in the church, I've read the Bible nearly my whole life, and I've always heard these things, but every time I seem to read the Bible, it feels like I'm just turning my diamond a little bit more to see a new glimpse of God.
Very cool. So cornflakes commercial that they were trying to sell cornflakes again, and they said taste them again for the first time. And it's sort of that idea. You can read the same passage over and over, and then a year later read it again. It's like, how did I miss that the first time? So we're introducing today the Gospel of John. If you've been following us in the Bible journey, you've done Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I got to tell you, I'm excited to get to the book of John. I love the Gospels, and I love Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but they are sort of objective, factual information guys. And then we get to John, who is more of an artist, who's more of a mystery, who likes to dive into the deeper theological things. And so as we go through the book of John, you're going to notice his style is more theological, but he does it with a deep sense of passion and love. That's what I love about it. As you read the book, you'll notice that the word believe is used over 98 times, and the word love is used repeatedly, because that sort of sums up what John is doing. I want you to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and if you do, you'll learn to love him more and experience his love. So that's the way he sort of writes. At the end of John, he tells us why he wrote the book. Chapter 20, verse 30 and 31. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But because these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. There it is. You get this idea of belief and love. So it's interesting. John sort of organizes his book, especially the first half of the book, around 7 signs and 7 I am statements. Let's jump into the I am statements first.
Yeah.
What are they? Why are they important?
Yeah, so Jesus will make 7 I am statements in the book of John. And really, when we start to dig into the I am statements, here's what almost we kind of want to do is we want to understand this from what would have this meant to the Jewish audience that he was speaking to. And so the first thing that is automatically captured, in the I am statement is the first 2 words, I am. And really, to kind of get this sense of like what the Jewish audience would have thought, we kind of need to go back to Exodus when Moses is speaking to God in the burning bush. And, he says this in Exodus 3:13, then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask, what is your name? What shall I say to them? And God's response is, I am who I am. And he said to them, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And so for the Jewish people, those words I am were really God's name, and that's kind of how they viewed the name of God, as I am. And so when Jesus is making these I am statements, those 2 words would have jumped off the page to his Jewish audience pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
Is Jesus saying he is God here? Is he saying that he's equal to God? And so, first 2 words automatically is now prescribing this characteristic about Jesus onto himself, right? That he's God. And
so in Exodus, when he says I am, it's a statement of divinity. It's a statement of self-sufficiency. What is the?
I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
Totally. It's God is. Like he is never was. God has never been a was or a future. God is. So
okay. So right away, Jesus is saying one and the same here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And so then, he follows it up with, a statement, bread of life, the way, the truth, the light. Those are the things that, Jesus is now saying. And when I think we read those, I think it's almost Jesus is now describing the identity of God and saying, hey, look, you know, because usually they're followed up with a teaching saying, you know, I'm the bread of life. Whoever eats of my flesh will never be hungry again. And so almost kind of describing who God is in a sense. And
so as we read through John and run across these I am statements, there's obviously some symbolism in them. It's not literally
right
eating the flesh of Jesus. Jesus is not literally a door. So we got to be cautious to grab the symbolism and look for what's behind that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Give me one example. Jesus is the bread of life.
Right. You know, like, I think whenever I read the bread of life, and my understanding of it is like that Jesus completely satisfies our hunger. You know, and when we search the world, we're trying to search things that'll fill us up. But with Jesus saying, hey, look, no, I will fill you up. I will give you the nutrients that you need.
Yeah, I'm essential.
Yeah.
Bread in Jewish culture was considered an essential food article. It was basic. Good. So we have 7 I am statements. In the first half of the book, in the first 11 chapters, you're going to get 7 signs where Jesus does 7 miracles. And they range from the first one, Jesus turns water into wine. Chapter 2, you have healing of a nobleman's son, a paralyzed man, feeding of the 5,000, Jesus walking on the water. Wish I could have been in the boat for that. Healing of a man born blind. That's significant because no one had ever been healed who had been born blind. And then the final one is raising Lazarus from the dead. As you read through the first 11 chapters of John, you're going to see these signs, and John is using them to start with something simple, water into wine, and he ends with raising somebody from the dead. And I think what John is trying to do there is establish belief and establish faith in both the disciples and in people, because each time Jesus does one of the signs, there's afterwards this call to believe. Will you believe in me? And I find it interesting that in chapter 2, it's water into wine. Okay, that's cool, but really? But then we finish with Lazarus being raised from the dead. So notice how they progress. You get sort of a cool thing, but you end with someone rising from the dead. So take note of those signs. And as we go through the book, we'll point those out, both the I am statements and the sign statements. And hopefully, just like the people in the Bible, we'll believe more deeply. So the difference between believing for an unbeliever, faith in Christ, and then for the believer, how do these things help the believer? Because we're sort of, I'm assuming most of us are believers. So how are the I am statements building the believer's faith?
I think it's important when we come across them that we let Jesus's words define who God is and build his identity rather than what we want to say. We kind of talked about it earlier, but like, for example, we might say that Jesus is the bread of life, but do we live in that way? Do we live being fully content with our relationship with Jesus and that's it? And so when we come across those, we should really let those define our life and our belief in him and shape the things that we do.
Absolutely.
And not what we necessarily want or what we think is best.
It's really cool who Jesus is, and we ought to grasp the depth of that, but it ought to be personal as well. So, all right, now that you've got that foundation, folks, let's jump into chapter 1. And I'd love the fact that John doesn't go, hey, let's go to the birth narrative and talk about Jesus in Bethlehem. John goes to a much more theological and mysterious approach. I love that. So let me read verses 1 through 4 and let's unpack them. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. These are incredibly powerful words. So I'll let you start. Let's unpack those. What do you got?
Where do we start?
Minutes.
It's just so cool, from just taking a step back to think that John went back to Genesis, to almost not reword it, to not change it, but to almost add, Jesus, into the narrative of it.
Yeah. In the beginning was the Word, and everything the Genesis promised, now here it is in reality.
Right.
Here's Christ promising and being life. So think about those things. After announcing the ministry of John the Baptist and then taking Jesus as the light of the world, John says this, verses 14 to 18. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. Glory as the only Son. I'll get this. Glory as the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness about him and cried out, "This was he whom I said, he who comes after me ranks before me, because he was before me. For from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace." I love that phrase, grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth come through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. God, the only Son, who is at the Father's side, has made him known. Let's just start with verse 14. John tells us that Jesus left the glories of heaven, became a human, grew up, and dwelt among us. Why is that so important? Why does John hit that?
Yeah, I always tell our students this, but God, we have a God who knows exactly what you're going through. That God would have left his heavenly glories to come to earth to live human life. It shows us and it tells us that God knows exactly what it feels like to have a friend betray him, to go through trials and temptations, to know what it's like to stub your toe on the kitchen Like, God knows what it's like to be in our shoes. And so that's when I see that, it's crazy to know that we have a God who knows exactly what we're going through.
Yeah.
And can relate with us.
I would have hated to be his brother. Well, Jesus did it. No, he didn't. So, yeah. So Jesus basically is getting to the idea of here is Jesus, God in human form, relating to us. Then this phrase, grace and truth, it's a wonderful phrase, full of grace and truth. Jesus was full of grace and truth. How are those playing off each other?
Yeah, like Jesus is, it just tells us so much about Jesus. That when we stumble, when we fall, there's grace, that there's forgiveness in that he will forgive us of our sins, and there's that grace, that forgiveness. But also it speaks of his truth, and how Jesus doesn't want us to stumble on those paths away from him, that he almost wants to guide us back on the narrow path, back towards him. But it speaks of, who he is, that there's grace and truth, correction.
Yeah. And I hope that's encouragement to people. Christ comes full of grace and truth, coming to tell us what is true, to demonstrate truth in himself, but also giving grace in our weaknesses and frailty. What an encouragement that is. I hope that encourages you guys. Let's jump into chapter 2. We get the first sign. Jesus is at a wedding in Cana, and they run out of wine, and which in that culture would have been horrible. And so his mom comes and says, "Hey, what can you do to help?" And Jesus said, "It's not my time." What do you think he meant by that? He wasn't saying, "Hey, Mom, I'm not going to play. It's not my time."
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you just almost wonder if Jesus was, kind of knew what was going to happen, or knew what was going to unfold when he started to perform these signs and wonders. You wonder if Jesus maybe in his humanity and saying, "Hey, look, I don't want to go to the cross," might just wanted to push it. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah. And people have wrestled with that, and I don't think Jesus was saying to Mom, "Hey, get away from me." I think it's Jesus is on a timetable of revealing himself to humanity.
Right.
And he had just called his first disciples, and perhaps there's a little bit of, there's a timing here, and I'm not ready to fully reveal myself.
Right.
But in kindness to his mom, and that's always a good idea. Mm-hmm. Be kind to your mom. He turns the water into wine, and you can read the story. And one of the benefits of that is the disciples believed in him. And I think Jesus never wastes an opportunity to deepen our belief in him. Never. So we need to sort of wrap up. Any other thoughts come to mind on chapters 1 and 2? Or
the book of John's amazing. So enjoy it. going to be so fun to read through.
It's so different from the other Gospels. So I hope you enjoy the book of John as we go through it. May you find journey in the joy of reading the Bible.